Okay, we'll get underway with the presentations now, beginning with our first company, Global Crypto. They describe themselves as fish-proof web authentication. Their CEO is Todd Merrill. Todd, good luck.
Thanks. Can you hear me back there? My name's Todd Merrill. I'm CEO of Global Crypto Systems. We're a bunch of guys from Georgia. I'm from LaGrange. I grew up there. We're definitely a part of the DNA of the Atlanta and Georgia community. Bill Barrington grew up in Atlanta. Chief architect Lawrence Guillory is here. Grew up in Warner Robins, business development. Eric, are you here? There he is, our tech CFO. Are you from Atlanta? Okay. Lives in Marietta, though. That's all right. Love to talk to you today about our company. It's one of my favorite things to talk about lately. Global Crypto provides secure, easy-to-use authentication software to protect businesses on the web. Has anybody ever gotten one of those weird emails from a bank and you knew that something was wrong with it, but you weren't sure exactly what was going on? Well, it's called phishing, and the bad guys are trying to steal your login information and drain your bank account. Actually, this activity cost U.S. banks $2.9 billion in fraud losses last year. And in fact, the bad guys are getting so good at this, they don't even have to send you an email anymore. They can arrange it so that when you type in yourbank.com, you don't go to your bank anymore. You go to the bad guy website, and whatever you type in, they type into the bank, and whatever the bank displays, they display it back to you. It's called a man-in-the-middle attack, and that's something that we solve. But it's getting to be a bad problem. The bad guys are doing a lot better than our security white hat guys. Here's a peak phishing chart. As you can see, phishing attacks just got started a couple of years ago. It's actually a very good growth industry. We hope to turn that around. Phishing's getting bad. As I said before, there's emerging problems, man in the middle, like I described before, and DNS poisoning is where they can reroute where yourbank.com goes on the internet. Instead of actually your bank, they go to the bad guy website. And then there's a new attack called man in the browser, where they don't even have to mess with the network anymore. They can drive by, put a little bit of malware inside your browser, and then they watch what you type in on the screen. And you can imagine for an e-commerce checkout how devastating this would be in terms of identity theft. You get to the point where you decide your book's $10. How do you want to pay? Visa, MasterCard, Amex, Revolution Money, and we'll talk about that. The next thing you do is you start typing in a bunch of personal information, name, address, credit card number, CCV, a bunch of stuff that identity thief would love to get beyond just your credit card number. And we thwart all these kinds of attacks. Just one data point for you. Last year, U.S. banks spent $6 billion to tackle this problem. This is just in the United States, and they still lost $2.8 billion. Actually, I think the new number came out, it was $3.1 billion, according to Gartner this year. So they're spending money, they're still losing money. And it's not just banks that this applies to. Let's talk about how we solve this problem. First of all, this is our solution. We give away a browser toolbar to the end user. There's one button that says login, so it's a very simple user interface, and that's very crucial to cryptography and authentication. A lot of people, the solutions in the past, such as PKI solutions, have been very cumbersome, very complicated. People don't understand them. There's not going to be a good uptake in security if it's hard to use, if it's cumbersome. So from the beginning, we've designed a very simple user interface. Then the other thing we have is we have a picture and a password, and that's all the user has to understand is they have a toolbar, one button on it, a picture, and a password. We sell software to institutions that have web servers, such as a bank or an e-commerce vendor. And we're packaged as a web service, and that's very important because traditionally, authentication solutions have been some crazy box in the back room in a data center, and you have to have some really smart people to plumb this in, and it talks to your web server. And then at the application layer, you're already authenticated. You have no shot at looking at how the user authenticated. We're architected as a web service, so the same people who write your web code can plumb in our authentication service, and it's very easy. It's very simple. It's very portable. You can run it on a VMware solution. You can run it on a Linux box. You can run it as a hosted service anywhere on the internet, and it's very flexible. So that's one of our key differentiators. I'd like to talk about our technology very quickly. There's two basic concepts. One of them is called steganography, and that's the art of hiding things. So we use steganography to hide cryptographic elements inside of a digital picture. And we do it such that after we're done, you can't tell before and after that anything happened to the picture, but the information's in there so the computer can pull it out. And the other concept is a best friends forever locket. Teenage girls get these lockets. They're shaped like a heart, and there's 2 halves to it, and they have a message on them, best friends forever. You rip them in half. You take half. I take half. And then when we get back together, we put it back together, and we're buddies. We're mutually authenticated at that point. And that's what we do with a picture. So very briefly, there's a little bit more to it than this, but this is a good way to think about it. You want to be the bank? So say you have a digital image like this. You have the bank sign it, and then you have the user sign it. All right, so there's 2 signatures. And we rip this in half. Don't lose that. So when we go to authenticate, I give him my half, put it back together. Is that your signature, Mr. User? Yes? Okay, give me your half. Yep, okay, we're good. So we're mutually authenticated now. And that's what this red stripe and this yellow stripe signifies, a digital signature on the actual image. So there's a shared secret. There's some digital signatures. We use very strong cryptographic, well-proven techniques. But the user is totally oblivious. It's just a pretty picture of your dog, your house, your kid, anything you want. And we don't really care. It's just a digital picture. So let's talk about our market. The market for what we're doing is anybody in the world who does business on the internet that has sensitive information they need to protect, which is a huge, vast global market. Just like to go through a little bit of the segmentation. The first line is strong authentication. Sometimes that has the label PKI. That's biometrics, smart cards, one-time token generators, that kind of thing. RSA is the granddaddy of this particular market. It's an old market. And traditionally, it's been people who are well-heeled, have a lot of money to spend, have a lot of resources to deploy this type of solution. It's north of $6 billion globally. And it's really been plagued by complexity of rollout, complexity of operation. So it's hard for this market to really grow beyond where it is today. But there is a need for strong security, so people are interested in it. So we feel like if we can come in with the strength of the PKI solution at a very cheap cost point without hardware, and then also make it very easy to use, we're onto something. And that's what we're talking about today. The federal government for the United States spends several $100 million on authentication. There's electronic medical records for the United States and European Union. Right now, it's a small market. I think 20% of doctors' offices in America actually have electronic medical records. I'm not sure why the number's so low. I think there's going to be a push in the future. I don't think it's quite here today. So that's a market we're going to keep our eye on. It's scheduled, if you talk to Gartner and Forrester, people like that, it's scheduled to grow rapidly. It's not quite here yet. And then we have a couple of interesting markets. The last 3 are things that we want to talk about. Online retail banking. Actually, in 2005, the federal government came down, the FFIEC, and they had this famous mandate. They said, okay, online retail banking is not secure with just username and password to log into your bank account. We need for you to go to multi-factor authentication. So banks had to spend a lot of money to go out and get some kind of multi-factor authentication. By and large, what they did was they settled on something that was pretty cheap, Passmark, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. They're still, like I said in a previous slide, they're still losing a lot of money to fraud, although they did get their check mark. So we feel like that's a market that we need to catch a second wave in, but there's definitely opportunity there. Mobile payments is a small market, and it's about ready to go. The big linchpin in that market is, if you talk to everybody, it's mobile security. How do you secure your cell phone? So we have a very good answer for that. Since we're a picture and a password, it's just simple to port our stuff to a cell phone or any platform you want to go to. And then you do the strong cryptography that's necessary to authenticate. And then this last one, if there's anybody from IBM in the audience, I'd love to talk to you. Identity and access management, and IBM's a big player in that. That's corporate applications. The poster child for that is Salesforce.com, which actually got in the news a couple weeks ago for getting phished. These are corporate applications. Everybody in the world is figuring out the way to go is to make applications available on the internet for your users, your customers, your partners to come access. Well, that brings up a whole nother layer of security problems, which we can solve. And actually, we're in that world already. We're architected as a service, a web service. So, Salesforce.com can integrate this in a week or two, no problem. So, how do you break this down? There's a lot of people that need our help. We can't help them all right now. So we look at antifishing.org, and these are people who have a very public problem with phishing. This is who's getting phished today. Pretty much it's eBay and PayPal, which is kind of the same company. And then here you see U.S. banks, Italian banks. The IRS actually showed up this year around tax time. They start sending out phishing messages. And then also the economic stimulus checks that came out, you started seeing some fraud around that. But as it turns out, one of our first customers is a company called Revolution Money. And we're real excited about Revolution Money. They want to be Visa meets PayPal. And they've got a really gold-plated board. They're going to really take over the world. But we're helping them with their online PayPal side of things by enabling them to do a one-click e-commerce checkout and not have to have the user enter all that personal information. And actually, instead of just entering your PIN or your CCV number, which people can get those, we actually perform a strong cryptographic authentication between the vendor, say Amazon.com, the user, and the transaction processor. So it goes from A to B to C. We know we can prove cryptographically the message originated with the vendor. It got to the user intact. The user saw it. The user is who they say they are. So you have non-repudiation. And then it made it to the transaction processor. We can cryptographically prove that all that happened. It's all intact. And then on the user side, it's just a one-click checkout, which is a lot easier than what it is today. So we feel like we have a huge win there, and we're pretty excited about our Revolution Money opportunity. Our competition generally is divided into two camps. Today, this is actually Fidelity.com, which is my bank, I'm kind of embarrassed to say. But the Social Security number and PIN, which is horrible. That's how you can log into Fidelity. And no, I'm not going to tell you my Social Security number like that other guy. That's crazy. So traditionally, you've had RSA and a lot of strong PKI-type companies. Typically, they're expensive. They're $8, $10, $12 a user per year. There's typically a hardware component, some little token or smart card that you have to buy. RSA will sell you those for $50 for 3-year license per user. They're incredibly complicated to deploy. Typically, some of them require a third-party certificate authority, which is yet another place you can go attack these methods. And they're really strong, and it's very good math, but it's just hard to use. It's expensive. So it hasn't really taken off like it should. It hasn't become as ubiquitous as it needs to be. And then over here you have Passmark, Vdupe, and then 41st Parameter, which isn't really even authentication. It's fraud detection software. And that's what a lot of banks have done, is they implemented Passmark because it comes in at $2 or $1 a user per year. And it gets their check mark for the federal regulators, and then off they go. Well, they're still losing money. So it's not very good security. But it doesn't impact the end user as much, so they like it. So we feel like we have a very good story. We're as strong or stronger than these guys. In fact, we solved some problems like man in the middle that render these kinds of techniques obsolete. And then we come in at a price point and ease of use for these guys. So that's the big story here, is we've taken cryptography, made it very simple, very easy to deploy, and yet we've retained all the great math of the old style cryptography. So that's our story. Competitively, we're the only people doing this with steganography and embedding cryptographic information inside of pictures. We're very simple to operate, which is a huge deal. PKI is known for being just very bad to operate. We're a software solution, so we're very cost effective. We're a web service, which is non-trivial. In the past, it hasn't been a web service. It's been very hard to integrate. You've had to have one guy that's a very low-level programmer do the cryptography. Then you have your web developers, and they're doing something else. So now with our solution, we just say, here's our web service. Put it on a virtual Linux machine. Off you go. And just make one web call, pass a picture back and forth, and you're authenticated. And then it's a simple user interface. So that's very important feedback that we've got very early on when we were talking to some of the big banks, is you can't mess with the end user too much, or else there won't be uptake in the solution. So we feel like we've got a very compelling story with that. And then one interesting tidbit, since we do have a toolbar, we have software on the end user's PC. If they get attacked outside of a connection to your actual web server, we can still take down the bad guys. We detect fraud right there instantly, and we can drop a trouble ticket on the internet to a central clearinghouse. So today, it's 7.5, 8 hours to actually recognize where the bad guy is. Well, guess what? With Fast Flux, DNS, talk to the Damballa guys, the bad guys are gone in 5, 10, 15 minutes. So 8 hours is not sufficient. We can do it instantly, real time. We know who they are, what their IP address is, what certificate they used, what URL they were trying to phish you on, and we can go get them right now. And then we can authenticate transactions. So we have a very good play beyond just simple user authentication, identity management. We can also authenticate e-commerce transactions. So our business model is pretty simple. We sell server software to institutions that have a web server. Almost always, the big serious ones will choose option A. They want to own the authentication web service behind their firewall, behind their web application. We also offer outsourced server in case they want to get bootstrapped, and one of our customers, Global Standard Financial, is choosing that option for now. We charge $2 a user a year, so we come into the low price point of Passmark, and then we optionally will upsell you to transaction processing. $2 or 2 cents a transaction is what we're getting today. Professional services, pretty typical. On-site services will help you plumb our software into your system, and then we'll also write some custom code for you. We charge more than that, don't we? We ought to. Here's our go-to-market strategy. We want to establish channel partners early. We're actually talking to Revolution Money, and they're providing a lot of pull-through for us in the payment card space. We're talking to online banking outsourcers. There's not much of them. Carillion, CheckFree, Fiserv now is one of the big ones, the 400-pound gorilla in that space, and then e-commerce integrators. We also want to sell directly to people who do business on the web. One of our first customers is Global Standard Financial. They have a financial application on the internet. Also want to talk to e-commerce sites and information vendors such as Equifax, ChoicePoint. Here's our team. Todd Merrill. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started Performance IT before this. I had a real estate company. We won't talk about that. That was a post-bubble hangover thing. I have a security background and a communications background. I'm a software guy by education. Bill Barrington's here. I guess I should talk about Lawrence Guillory. He's here too. First, business development. He came out of the check-free world. He understands financial applications very well. He's going to do business development. Bill's here. Bill worked for Turner Broadcasting, so he understands large-scale, high-availability web applications. So thanks, guys, for being a part of all this. We also have board members. Two of our major investors are Imlay. Sig's here, right? Hey, Sig, thanks. Thanks a lot. Is Steve Chaddick here? I guess Steve was in the Cayman Islands. He's probably still down there. So good for him. He was at Siena with me, and so Steve's very important to me. He's on our board. And then we've attracted Eric Foystad. Eric, right there, Tech CFO. Good job. He came out of the total systems payment processing world. Here's our revenue numbers. We're going to sell a lot of stuff in the first year. We're going to be pretty miserly with how we spend money. And then we're going to make money, and then we're going to break even about the second year. As far as our milestones, we've already achieved a server, shippable software, the Internet Explorer toolbar. We have a prototype for the plugin for Mozilla, and we've got a contractor working on the first round of Flash. So we're probably going to need a new goal here before too long. We've already selected 2 beta clients and installed trials, and we're going to begin to raise capital sometime in the first year to get this off the ground. We've closed our first tranche of Series A financing, filed a patent, got 2 customers integrated. We've expanded the product quite a bit, as you can see here, and we're branching out into new market applications. We're named a top 16 most innovative companies in Georgia, and we won the Cap Venture Series. And we hope to add this contest to the slide. We'll just move that right down here for the next presentation, so you guys can help me with that. Just in summary, we're a startup software company. We need a lot of help. We don't have a whole lot of money. We're from around here, so we're part of the DNA of Georgia. We have a widely applicable, highly disruptive technology, and we're addressing markets that are vast and global in nature. We would love to win this contest. We'll hire some people from here, hopefully some tech students. We're going to finish the product, put more polish on it. We're going to take our message out to the market. get some more feet on the street, and then that'll help us establish a firm beachhead in a couple more market segments. So that's all I have today. Open it up for questions.